trying to do three basic things. First is to show you some of the things that you have already authorized investment in at the plant in regard to watershed management. You've already authorized, and it's mostly complete, the Claricone project. You've already authorized, we've already spent a fair amount of money on watershed management. The CDM Smith report, which you also adopted and had a study session on last year, recommended we make some significant other improvements here at the water treatment plant with regard to line feed and electrical systems. And so we want to brief you on what you've already invested in, what we continue to invest in, and what's planned in the CDM Smith report, because you'll be seeing these later on. And rather than just show slides, we thought it would be helpful to get a quick walk around. So in just a second, Robert Weil, our assistant city engineer for water and sewer, is going to start our PowerPoint. Some of our staff members will talk very, very briefly about what you're going to be looking at in the tour, then we'll take the tour. The second thing that I'm hoping to do this evening is discuss with you what I call in the agenda material phase one of additional water supply proposals that you've already seen before, we've already talked about before with regard to the DeWitt pumping area, with regard to the former Vulcan site, and with regard to Lake Kokorozawa. Those are things we've talked about before, and which the Interra report recommends that we do in order to have drought resiliency. Between the additional capacity we got just by doing the dredging project, plus these three other projects, we think we have that drought resiliency. But if the city is interested in providing additional water above and beyond drought resiliency, that's the third question. Should we go down the road of trying to have additional water supply and water capacity, both potable and non-potable, so that we can attract more businesses like Innovative, like LG Chem, like Warwick, and some of the other businesses and major employers up on North College Road, then it goes beyond the parameters of the Interra report, which was just to provide drought resiliency. And so that causes us to think about some other planning decisions. And so the three things are, look what we've already funded here at the plant in watershed. Number two, for the phase one water that was just to get resiliency, I think we'll do that satisfactorily. And then number three, if we want to go beyond that and what some of the options are for it. So Robert, I'll turn it over to you. Give us a couple of quick comments about where we're going to go in the plant, and then we'll go on the tour.
Okay, sure. Well, this is just an aerial view of where we are. We're here in the conference room. And what we're going to do is go out, first of all, to see this Claricone project. That's just recently here. And then after that, on the way back from them, we're going to stop and see a piece of equipment called a lime slaker, which is part of the upcoming projects that we want you to do. And then lastly, we'll go down to this thing called a high service pump. And it's quite a thing to behold. And so that's a part of the electrical upgrades that are coming. And we'll come back to it. So I'm going to turn it over to Chandra, who's going to talk a little bit about, just before you see what you see,
Welcome everybody. Again, I'm Chandra Smith. I'm the Water Production Operations Supervisor at the Water Plant. And just a couple of the noteworthy items we'll see as we proceed through the tour. This time of year we do a fall washout on our existing east train that was in service while the Claricone project was taking place. We'll be able to note some of the lime deposits, as well as see the inner workings of the clarifier itself, as far as mechanical and electrical internal parts. Also, we'll be making our way back through the chemical feed room. We'll be looking at the lime slicking technology that we currently have in place, as well as a quick discussion on a newer technology using hydrated lime that reduces scale, as you'll see the scale put up on our ADC equipment, and then making our way to the service plant.
And why, we get back to that slide really quick, and why this is relevant is just because when we bid out this chemical feed, we're going to bid it out with the current technology and with the upgraded technology. Either way, the current technology will be cheaper in the short term, but not in the long term. And to really evaluate it, we're going to bid it both ways. And so, you'll see that in the form of a recommendation coming back to you. That's why that choice is there.
I think we're ready to begin our tour. That'll be very brief and quick. One safety note, we are a water treatment facility. We use chlorine gas on site and storage as well. For our RMP, our risk management program, I have to inform you of that, as well as if there is an incident or staging meeting, the point is the front part of the line. That being said, let's prepare to head out.
Our watershed grants that we have, right now, we got the 2021 Section 319 grant for $150,000. That, all those projects are completed pretty much. The last project is probably about 90% done now. We've been working on it last weekend. All the watershed plans are complete, and we will finish up that grant in this year. The other one, the 2022, which is for $250,000, we'll start this construction project this fall, and then we'll do the watershed plans. North Water is currently working on those right now. And then the 2023 Section 319 grant for $350,000, we are still waiting a response from my EPA. We probably won't get a response from that until next year. And then the last one is the USDA Regional Conservation Partnership Program for $9.8 million. And we are currently holding kickoff meetings with that with NRCS offices and our partners right now, getting that organized, and we'll do a spring sign up for that in 2024. And just the future projects we got going. We got Staley Basin watershed funds. We're going to use them for the hot water ditch for shoreline stabilization around that area, and then also around the Staley boat ramp, which is also known as the Country Club boat ramp. We'll have some grade stabilization or shoreline stabilization projects over there. And we will continue to work on future grants on trying to bring in other money for the watershed.
So we are now, we've now come to the end of the first item, which was familiarize the council with the status of the South Water Treatment Plant improvements and the watershed project. Obviously, we have a long ways to go on both of them with other items that will be coming to council in months and years ahead. I think we early on in the watershed management program said that we, over the next 10 to 15 years, need to spend $20 million. You can see we got $10.5 million of it already from outside sources, and that doesn't even include the portion that the council will allocate of its local resources. So I think we've gotten off to a good start. But that was item number one. So just on the on watershed management and the plan. Any questions before we go on to the second one?
I have a question on that $9.8 million grant for 2024. You said, so will that money go towards these proposed projects you're talking about?
Yeah, there's a lot of them. So where is that? Because all the others are 100,000. It's about $9.8 million.
So this is a partnership program that we have with NRCS, so which is the Natural Resource Conservation Service. And so what we'll do is we will partner with farmers, and that is for ones that they want to put on cover crops, tillage management, and nutrient management. And so that is the 9.8 is over 5 years. And so we're working on signing farmers up to put cover crops on your field for 5 years to help that
So
reduction.
you did it 2024, but it's good, so 2024, you're expecting to.
Yes, yes.
Jennifer, as you know, the Lake Decatur continues to fill the same. The last estimate that we received from Northwater Consulting is that up to about $700,000 per year settling in Lake Decatur. And so the best farmland on planet Earth is settling in our lake. And when you look at the terror report that we received, its assumption is that there is no change in the water capacity of the lake. So I guess I have multiple questions. First, you mentioned that stock about 419.6 tons annually. how many tons of sediment is settling in Lake Decatur per year?
I'm sorry. Look into that for you.
Second, city manager Wright is correct that North Water Consulting requested $22+ million for watershed management practices, or watershed management implementation practices. But the time frame is within 4 years, and that was approximately 2 years ago that this management document is provided to the council. So I guess my question is, where is the other $10 million? And so, for example, one of the things that North Waters recommended was a wetland complex at the north end of the lake. So where is that? Because ultimately, if sediment keeps coming in at a rate of $500,000 to $700,000 a year, and that's unabated, that began the year we started dredging and continues. All of these assumptions that we're going to be talking about a little later on are negated because we've got less volume of water in our bathtub, so to speak. So I guess to shorten that, when is the council going to see the other $10 million worth of funding?
Jennifer, let me see if I can question.
We agree.
North Water Resources Jennifer's giving an update of projects that we've done. At the same time, North Water and Jeff Beckler have made it clear that they continue to study these options, including some of the ones that Data was mentioned, and some other ones that are in his report. And we will continue to bring those to council as they are ready. At this point, I'm not especially concerned about funding of it for a couple of reasons. The first is there's a fair amount of money out there. As you can see, we've been pretty successful in getting it for exactly this kind of work, and particularly in a sensitive watershed, which ours is considered a sensitive watershed by Illinois EPA and by the Illinois Department of Agriculture. Furthermore, council has certainly committed in its long-range planning to funding portions of this from its own water resources, its own water funds as well. So at no point has any project that staff has brought or the Beckler has bought has not advanced to city council because we didn't have the money for it.
Well, I guess I have a follow-up to that.
David, I'm gonna just tell you right now, I'm not gonna sit here all night and listen to you ask 50,000 questions, okay? Please, just have a few questions. We've got 7 council members here. I'm not gonna sit here all night listening to you talk, okay? I respect your opinions, but I'm not gonna sit here all night. So ask a few questions and let's get through this. And if you have other questions to ask later, then ask them outside the meeting. You don't need to hear 50,000 questions. I'm not gonna sit here for that. Well,
Pat, is there a question?
how receptive are the farmers with the partnership?
It's tough. I'm not gonna lie. It is tough. It's tough to get them on board. It's tough to get them to change. You gotta change the culture of agriculture. And that's hard you gotta change the way that their grandpa did it and plowed the fields to not plow the fields. And it's hard to get them on board with that. So, but it's a voluntary program. We can't force anybody to do it, but we are trying to get out there and change it.
Dennis?
Yeah, on that follow-up with this question, I assume there's some other farmers in other states or locations that are on board with that type of project.
Yes.
Have they been referred to them or somebody bringing some of those people in to talk to these?
Yeah, we work with other agencies that have done this in other areas and working with them on what they've done. Our big thing is 75% of our farm ground is managed by farm managers and absentee landowners, and that's the hard part. And so we're trying to target our farm managers, and we're going to be holding some kickoff meetings with them.
Yeah, so I'm just going to question 3 of 49,999.
Hi, David, I'm just
And
telling you,
go-
I don't wanna,
Do you-
I just
do you
don't wanna
want
sit here all
legal
night.
counsel? You want me to go legal counsel?
No,
and see
I don't,
what
I
the
just don't wanna
procedures
sit
are?
here all night and have you talk all night long. I
Well,
just
I'm
don't
asking
wanna do it.
questions. so I
Gentlemen,
That's
appreciate
fine,
it.
just make them brief.
Yeah, we could have order, then if you go ahead with your question.
Mr. Wright, you mentioned that the CBM Smith report included the expenses from the North Water consulting study. I just wanted to clarify that's what you said.
I believe I said that. I said that the CDM Smith report includes all of the recommendations on the sewer, I keep saying sewer, on the water treatment plant. The watershed management component of it is not covered by CDM Smith. That's why we brought Decatur's team on.
Okay, so in effect, right now, there is no pursuit of the $10+ million in other funding that is needed for watershed management.
Councilman Horn, we're pursuing funding all the time. That's why we brought this consultant on board, this Bonnet. Right? And some others, because basically to function in the same capacity and support for the city of Decatur as Ann Schneider does on the transportation side.
And if I could jump in, when we started the grade separation project that is around $90 million, we didn't have $90 million up front, and it has been an ongoing project. And you do it a chunk at a time, because you're never going to get all the money you need up front. You do it a piece at a time. And that's how we have proceeded with major infrastructure projects. You're just not going to get that checkbook every year. You get your 10 million here, which is a huge amount of money. Sometimes it's just, $500,000 here, $1 million there. We've had road projects I've worked on, and it's like, now it's probably a lot more, but $3 million a mile. I mean, you do it a chunk at a time. It's one bite out of the elephant. Yes, we want to do our best to keep up and keep a lot of things going at the same time, but you're never going to get all the money you need right up front. It just doesn't happen.
And I think we've been pretty successful in the
Amazing.
less than 2 years we have, and I am confident that between those other sources and the way that we're making those connections with the federal and state government, plus the city council's own commitment to spend its own water funds on it, that when each of those projects is ready for your adoption, we will have the funding for it.
We'd love to have the money to do it all right now. That's not how it works.
I'd like to have money to fix roads every day.
Exactly.
We're never gonna get every road fixed in the
And
city.
then you're
It's a
gonna need to
continual
do it
issue,
again.
just like the home. We're not gonna get every home torn down, we're doing the best we can. We can't get everything done. Unless somebody drops a potload of money. It's not gonna happen.
So are we ready to move to item 2?
I am, unless there's any other questions on this, on the water treatment plant or Jennifer's presentation on watersheds.
Okay, we're good.
Robert?
Well, I'm going to cover now, looking ahead, at what could be in the next 5 years, what the additional water we may need in the next 5 years to accommodate industrial growth in the city of Decatur. I'm Robert Weiland, the Assistant City Engineer for your water system. And I'll start by just looking back the past 3 years, and I have 2 bars here. The combination bars. The bottom is all of the water that comes out of this water treatment plant. And then on the top, all the water that comes out of the North Water Treatment Plant, which is owned by you. And on average, it's been about 34 MGD. Now, we're receiving applications essentially from a number of different industrial partners. And they're subject to non-disclosure agreements, so I can't talk about specifically. Well, in some, those partners would add up about 7 MGD of new demand over what we have right now. And most of it would come from the South Water Treatment Plant, although some would come also from the North Water Treatment Plant. So about 7 MGD is pretty firm in terms of active projects. There have been other projects waiting in the wings that have been coming into us through Intersect Illinois, and they're less certain. Some of them are in site selection still, but that would be an increase of up to 12 MGD. So the question that, as an engineer, I think, well, I have a problem. How do I provide 7 to 12 additional MGD? And we've done a lot of work within the staff to try to sort through this problem. That's, city manager Wright has given us a lot of leadership. In fact, when we were sitting down, he sketched out something that's really great. How do we need 7 to 12 MGD? Let's break it down into pieces. Part of what we need is just getting the water from this plant to the right place, improving the water distribution system, making bigger pipes. We have a consultant working on that. His name is consultant. Another part of that is, well, let's bring some new water sources in. And part of it was, some of these water sources were identified in the 2019 Decatur report. And so let's get those done. We've been working very hard on those, and those include the former Walton pit, Rosawa and Rhodes, and the good welcome upgrades. He's going to talk about that. And then we have ideas for new projects, new water sources. And some of these new ideas are ideas based on what Incoherent came up with. Let's try to extend their ideas, do hundreds of their ideas, and come up with more possibilities. Now, one thing to remember is that not all of the water for these industries needs to come through this plant. It's not all potable water. And so another strategy is to increase non-potable water supply to the northeast zone, and either to the North Water Treatment Plant or from the North Water Treatment Plant to serve the. And we always want to keep in mind new technology, and there are solutions like water reclamation that don't come out of the lake at all. Let's use the water that we've already used once, let's use it again, and that's particularly applicable to industries, but it tends to be rather expensive solution.
So Robert, before you leave this slide, if I could spend some time here, I thought this slide was so critical that I included it in your packets. So you have access to it. In our discussions with other partners, chief among them the sanitary district and ADM, I think that we're moving more and more to say, okay, let's put all the resources sort of on the table and then identify the best way to service them. It could be that increasing distribution from the Garfield tower is the best way, but it might be that if a new industry needs non-potable water just for process anyway, why should we go to the expense of chlorinating and adding distribution, large-scale distribution out there, and all they need is non-potable water anyway. So that could come from another source. It could come from ADM. We have, ever since the revisions made by you to the raw water agreement with ADM, we encourage them to think openly as well about not only their own needs, but making some of the non-pot production that comes out of the North Water Treatment Plant available to other users, if in fact that's determined to be the cheapest way to get it to them. And I think that sort of looking at all these sources together, aggregating them rather than individually saying, okay, we're going to get water for this business or for this business, makes the most sense. It's certainly the most holistic, and I think in the long term, it's the most cost effective. But it is, and this is the reason I wanted to take a short pause in Robert's presentation, it's undergirded by this central premise, is that if all we want to do is make sure that we have good drought resiliency in accordance with the recommendations of the 2019 Interra report, we only need phase 1. We only need phase 1, okay? And those were recommendations in the Interra report. They're good recommendations. It's a good and solid report. But what I've been talking to some of you about individually is, should we look beyond the scope of the Interra report? No criticism of the Interra report. They were tasked with just determining what we need for drought resiliency. Should we expand that scope to include water resiliency plus some additional amount, clearly yet to be determined? Robert has shown you a range of 7 to 12 MGD. I think we'll probably be on the lower side of that, but we don't know. There's a lot of variables yet to be worked out. But if we want to do that, if the assumption is the council says, yes, in the interest of economic development, of bringing additional jobs to Decatur, we want to go down the road of phase 2 and to look at more options, then that's where this is coming from. Not just from finding new sources, but also from generating it from our existing resources, like the ADM-owned North Water Treatment Plant and like water reclamation.
Can I ask a question on that, from an economic development standpoint? What is the process that city management and economic development people evaluate? Well, this project wants to come to town, but it's going to be a high water user, what's our return on investment? I mean, do we have some metrics that we say, not enough jobs and you're gonna use up too much water? I mean, in looking for the best uses, to me, you want to do something that's going to be long-standing and you get either the most jobs or the most return on investment. So can you elaborate a little bit for council on how that works?
Mayor, I think that's a really good question, and certainly we've had occasion to say to somebody, well, we want 5 MGD, but we're only gonna bring Decatur 20 jobs. Yeah, we don't want that. It's too much investment for what value it brings to the city. So we are making some of those decisions, but to your question, we haven't yet developed, and I think we probably should, a more systematic, more predictable decision matrix for deciding what do we, and it's not just job creation, it's also investment in the community, likelihood for generation of local taxes, and a lot of different factors, which we try to take into consideration. But so far, we're doing it admittedly on a somewhat ad hoc basis.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question about this slide?
Sure.
This comes from the anxiety report. Are we using minimum elevation of 607 feet or 604 feet? And what's being described?
Well, this current project, which depends on being able to drop the lake from 607 to 604.
And then could you describe why the city decided to do 604, given that it had, talk about that, why they did 604 instead of 607?
He's probably.
I'd be glad to answer that for you. So, if we go below 604 in elevation of the lake, which is 9 feet lower than it is today, by the way, the water quality is so poor at that point that we don't even want to bring it into the water treatment plant. The plant cannot treat it to drinking water standards. We can drop the lake all the way down to 604 times severe drought, which is something we did not do until we finished the recent dredging project.
I apologize, I asked the wrong question. Why can't we drop it at 607? Why are we,
This might help.
why do we have to drop it?
Yeah, this might help again. So, which is the bigger slice of the pie? It's the city's South Water Treatment Plant is the bigger slice of the pie. You can make that pie bigger by dropping it to 604. You're not trying to keep this going. In other words, you meet most of your needs from this end of the lake, and that end of the lake, we can't pull out of the lake when we drop it to 604. We can pull it at this end, feed it up there. So it's kind of a strategy to manage our water resources the best way.
So we're going to 607, that's the level we're keeping it at, 607, and no, 604, sorry.
If we have to in a severe drought, we can go as far down as 604.
But by looking at other sources, we hope to make the likelihood of going from 607 to 604 even more remote.
I think I understand that. So my next question on this particular slide is this. Now, what I'm reading is a contract that we signed with ADM. And it says, Section 1, Part C, ADM shall be limited to the withdrawal of water from Lake Decatur to 24 MGD for its use. Go back to that graph that we had. So, if I'm reading this correctly, ADM is using approximately 15 MGD per year. Okay,
That's
Per day.
Pretty sorry. They're using 15 MGD per day, but contractually, if they had the capabilities to do so, they would do 24 MGD, correct?
Correct.
Legally.
Let me just make a caveat on the correct. So the 24 is the maximum per day, and when you're doing a water treatment plant, you've got to figure the average day and the maximum. And half the time it's a factor 1.3, 1.5, something like Now on, I think that contract says they can't go over 24 MGD on any day, I'm pretty sure it's like that. So, they're using 15.8 on an average day, but there's a higher number probably on the maximum day. And then another caveat is that their plant, although it's rated at 24 MGD, it actually can't sustain produce that.
But contractually,
Okay.
it's 24 mg. In your presentation, you talked about we currently need about 34 mgb, and projected is 41 mgb, and so the difference is 7. But that is coming from, you mentioned, is coming from the South Water Treatment. Is where we're
Primarily.
projecting that it's coming from, 7 mgb. Okay, so if I'm correct, ADM can draw another 9 mgb approximately from the North Water Treatment. And we're projecting another 7 mgb that we might need. But we are going to have to, potentially, contractually, if we want to stay within drought resilience, we need to make sure that there is enough water supply just to fill the gap for ADM's raw water agreement. And so if I look at the Intera report from 2019, in order to fill the gap just with ADM and meet our contractual obligations, we need to do the DeWitt oil field, the former Vulcan pit, Lake Toco, and in addition, we have to do some other projects. And so that's my concern here, that we have a contractual obligation to meet with ADM to make sure that we have drought resiliency in a severe drought, plus South Water Treatment Plant. So I think that's important. We've got to meet the requirements of ADM from our contract.
I really think it's important to say that I don't, maybe because we're having negotiations with ADM and other partners and David is not, I don't share Councilman Warren's worst case scenario. First, because before we entered into the contract with the changing raw water, we went back to Intera and we said, what is the maximum that we can allow ADM to take out of the North Water Treatment Plant without jeopardizing all of the city's other needs in the aggregate, as well as our drought resiliency goals? And the answer was 24 MGD, which is what ADM was allowed to have even before the city approved its revised raw water. It had been at that same level for many years, even though ADM wasn't at that level. The other reason that I don't think that it's an issue at all is because in our discussions with ADM and others, not just ADM, there's been this willingness to, as I said, and as I think that this slide illustrates, let's put everything on the table at the same time, look at it in the aggregate, and if that means that ADM should pump more or less out of the North Water Treatment Plant, if they should supply some of that non-potable water to an adjacent business down the road on Brush College, that's all part of it. And if for some reason all of those working relationships broke down, which I don't believe that they will, because they're very positive, the city could change the raw water agreement. So I really don't think that kind of a scenario is an issue, because everyone who is a major player in this process is committed to this aggregated approach.
So, this is, as the city manager said, I'm trying to give you a 30,000 foot elevation view here. Now, as an engineer, this I want to show you detailed drawings, but in concept, to improve the water distribution out there, I just have an arrow that shows we're going to build a 4-mile, 30-inch water main, basically from the Garfield to the Brush College Road and Grace River. And that would be more than enough potable water to supply all the and that seems to be an optimum solution from an engineering perspective, is it just feeds the whole northeast part. It allows for these developments plus future developments. I think we're working on a report that will spell all that out. And whatever comes in has to come out, so we'll also be needing to put in a sewer pump station at the corner, kind of just south of the corner of that same intersection of Upper Road and Ridgeway Road and Fresh College, and then a force main that goes over to the pump station. So we're kind of involved in engineering of these two projects.
Robert, if I could interject again, when the city council approved a couple of years ago the incentive program that helped bring Inova Feed here, and they've already started their first phase, and we realized that we needed a sewer lift station for them. And the amount of flow, as well as consequently the amount of cost of that lift station, was projected to be a certain number, and we have not brought that project back to you because, well, the good news is there's a whole bunch more industries that want to be able to contribute to it than we had anticipated or knew of at the time that you had given a preliminary okay for that lift station. So that lift station is growing in size, and we're still not ready to bring it back because the contributing businesses and flows is still just as much a part of the discussion of how much infrastructure we need out there as water is. And so so that project has gotten bigger. The brown line that Robert has put up on the slide has gotten bigger, and when we are able to, and I don't know when that will be, but when we're able to finalize that number more, then we'll come back to you. But it'll be more than it was originally because the number of contributing businesses has increased. So it comes back to that same question: are we willing to do more than what our original goal was in order to attract more businesses up there in the northeast quadrant?
How much more water can be pumped to that northeast quadrant without infrastructure?
Today, there's about 3 MGD without doing anything in surplus.
3 MGD in surplus right now.
Not in supply, Councilman Warren, but in the ability to deliver it to the northeast quadrant. We have the water. We don't have the ability to get it because of pumps and the pipe size. And I might add that although this is not what primarily drives it, it is economic development to bring new businesses to this area. An additional benefit is that this would add additional flow and pressure to the system in general to run this up here. But the reason for it is economic development.
If I can interrupt you. Yeah, on days like recently, fire flow is a key concern. And I'm a fan of this project for that reason too. Now I'm going to turn it over to Keith for this thing.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Keith Alexander, Water Production Manager. I'm going to give you a brief update on the street front projects, the Phase 1 projects that Intera recommended to us in 2019. I believe you have this in your council packet as a reminder of the Intera recommendations from the 2019 report. We already talked about the top one, which is the lowering of the Decatur minimum elevation to pump water into the water treatment plant. I'm going to talk about lines 2, 3, and 4. And line 5 is that if Lake Togo doesn't go for whatever reason, then we would go down to line 5. But I've got some good news to report on Togo. So the first one I'm going to mention to you is the former Vulcan gravel pit. The city has owned this for about 20 years. And soon after we bought it, we installed this, on the left photo, we installed a floating electrical platform with a submersible pump that goes down to the bottom of the pit. We're able to pump a fair amount of water out of this pit to our well water pump station, which then comes over here to the water treatment plant. So this water is blended with Lake Decatur water and enters the facility here to treat. The photo on the right shows you just how far down we can drop it when we need to pump that much water out of there. I think we get about 3 to 3.5 million gallons a day out of that pit for approximately 45 to 60 days. That's how full it is when we start. So I want to let you know that this is a resource that we've had for a number of years. It's our first drought resistant resource that we have. It's extremely inexpensive to operate, and it's very easy to put into the water. So why is it one of the options though for Intera? The reason why is, and Chandra did a good job explaining the sludge lagoons that we have over there too. So we have the sludge lagoons that you can see kind of like the white lagoons, and then far in the upper left corner is the former Volcan gravel pit that we own. And there's only one pipeline that goes from the sludge lagoons or the gravel pit to the raw water pump station, which is located right here by the dam, which then pumps all that water to the water treatment plant where we are tonight. The reason why it's an Intera project is we need a separate pipeline from the former Volcan gravel pit to the pump station so that we can reclaim both water sources during times of drought. Right now we can only pump Volcan gravel pit water or lime sludge excess water back to the plant. We want to be able to feed both systems to the water plant simultaneously. So that's why it's an Intera project. Intera is 85% done with the design of the new pipe, which is that blue dash line that just came up. That will be a new pipeline dedicated for the pits. They're about 85% done with the design work to be able to bid that project. So the next step is that we would bid that project with your approval and then construct the pipeline next year at a cost of about $1.4 million. This will provide 8% of the water supply drought gap that Intera said that we had back in 2018. So that is the update for the The next update is for Lake Tokorozawa Roads landfill, all one and the same. So just to kind of give you an orientation here, we got the Salmon River running through. Here's the Vulcan pit that we just talked about. So the next gravel pit downstream is what's called the Vulcan and Lake Toko pit. So the Rhodes family, which started the Rhodes landfill, that's the light colored irregular shape there in the middle of the photo there, they started a landfill many decades ago. And that landfill is now closed. That landfill is now under post-closure care by the Illinois EPA. That's their term for you've shut down a landfill, you've got to maintain that soil cover so that no other runoff goes into it. And you have to keep monitoring the water quality around that ex-landfill until you can prove to us being EPA, that's no longer an environmental threat. And so last fall was the latest round of those groundwater sampling efforts by the Rhodes family through their consulting firm. Those results are sitting at the EPA in Springfield awaiting review. The water section is very backlogged in terms of reviewing that data. Intera did not see any concerns with the results. They were able to see the results. But we're waiting to get EPA approval on those. Also, interestingly enough, there is a stormwater sewer that literally runs right under the landfill. It drains some of this portion of the west end of Fairview Avenue, and then it goes directly under the landfill, and the pipe discharges into the Salmon River. So that's a stormwater outfall that we do not anticipate having any problems with from a water quality standpoint, but to do due diligence, city staff actually sampled the storm sewer on the upstream side, the north side of the landfill, and also grabbed water samples down the river. We sent those to an independent lab for a detailed analysis. Again, you're not expecting to see anything, but you don't know until you send in the samples and get the results. So we're waiting for those two pieces of the Rhodes landfill environmental challenge to get wrapped up. Assuming that they are wrapped up favorably, Intera says City of Decatur, you should use Lake Toko and Rhodes as a permanent water supply. So that's what we're waiting for.
Keith, how old is that pipe? I mean, we're used to really old sewer pipes in this town. Is it like ancient to where it needs,
Someone have you any idea?
I believe it was built because they were building the grades up and blocking the storm water, so it's probably more when the landfill was in operation.
Was that the area where they did the relief for the flooding off of Fairview West one? Mid-70s?
I think they need to go through there
Okay.
without some.
All right.
Yeah, and there's a notch here in Lake Roads that connects with the river right there, and that's the flood relief. And just briefly, we used to always call both of these gravel pits Lake Tokozawa, and they are connected by culverts right here in between the two, so it's basically one large gravel pit. But the Rhodes family, out of respect to Charles Rhodes, who's one of the founding members of the family that started the landfill, they prefer to call the larger pit Lake Charlie Rhodes and the smaller pit Lake Tokozawa. But generically speaking, we just call all that Lake Toko, just for your information.
Just to clarify this, the water goes back and forth, the one goes into the other.
Yes, the water flows from Toko to Rhodes to the Sangamon River. Yes. So that's where we are on that. So the next step, if the environmental results come back favorably, which we think they will, but we don't know for sure yet, would be a long-term water use acquisition or land acquisition of the property for the water. The estimated project cost of putting in a permanent pumping and piping system to get that water to the South Water Treatment Plant is currently $11.7 million. That's the estimate. And this will provide 29% of the water supply from last but not least, we're going to talk about the DeWitt County well field. And this is actually the water coming out of the well field, dropping down this concrete wall into an ag ditch that eventually becomes Friends Creek, which then flows into the Sangamon River, which then flows into Lake Decatur. So this is the actual water coming out of that site. The city has owned the well field since the 1990s. We have 120 acres of farm ground there with 8 wells that go into the Muhammad Aquifer, which is the fantastic water resource to the north of us. And it's very clean water. The challenge is that it's expensive because we built this as an emergency water supply, not as a permanent water supply. So the old diesel engines are starting to fail. We had some challenges with some of the transmission piping that was originally designed back in the 90s as the most efficient. And so we had Terra look at updates to the DeWitt well field in its entirety. And we just received their preliminary engineering report 2 weeks ago in its second review. But it's recommending replacing that diesel pump system with electric motors, replacing the obsolete metering and controls mechanisms, removing the diesel fuel infrastructure, and installing remote telemetry back here at the South Water Treatment Plant, so we don't have to drive 8 miles north with our Gen every time we want to take a look at the well field. The next step in all of this for the council would be to authorize the completion of engineering and design specifications for that project for bid potentially as soon as late next year. Currently, that's a $3.4 million estimate for that construction project. This would provide 20% of that drought supply gap. That's what we call the drought supply gap. This would supply 20% of the drought supply gap. If we added a pipeline, instead of going the overland route through Fence Creek, Sangamon River, Lake Decatur, and instead we built a pipeline from the DeWitt well field to the city of Decatur, then it becomes a 29% gap. It's 20 without the pipeline, 29 with the pipeline. And so that ends my presentation on an update on the 3 phase 1 projects. And then when we're ready, we'll move into Metropol's phase 2.
You're kind of expensive, Keith. I'm not sure we can go to phase 2.
It's a good thing you're sitting down.
Maybe I missed, what would be the cost for the pipeline?
That's something that Mr. Hill's going to present this evening.
So the 3.4 is just for the equipment replacement.
Correct.
And not the pumping into the, in Friends Creek. It's 3.4 million.
3.4 is to change the diesel system to an electrified system, and also to replace all of the controls and metering, and also get those controls here at the water.
Changing the diesel pump to electric.
Yes.
So I'm looking at the Contrary report, and there's alternative 2A, DeWitt well field, and that is the 3.4 million.
Correct.
Okay. And what did you say the Lake Toko was?
cost?
I'm sorry, the former Vulcan.
Yeah, 1.4.
1.4.
1.74.
Okay, and then the next question I have is this. I'm looking at the internal update. The ADM 24 MGD, our supply gap is 3.7 million. The ADM normal procedures 2050 is 1.4. Okay, so the supply gap is 2.3 MGD per day. The late topo is 900 MGD. The former Vulcan pit is 250 MGD. And the DeWitt well field is 630 million gallons. We still got a gap. So where, that's just for the ADM's 24 MGD. So how are we gonna fill that gap first?
That's Mr.
Well, that
Wilson.
way, that question was answered, that would be. That is that chart, the six council. We use this chart here, the last years. And this is the well-built, breaking through these, now, Tara did look at the other options, going downstream further to pick up additional supply. So it's been pointed out, because we have to use some of this supply here as regular supply, and we've got to get more water, and that's what we propose then to do an amendment to the Tara. Work with the Tara and start finding additional water supplies. Those would be anywhere from another well filling in Muhammad or additional shallow wells around the lake, dam south of the dam, gets more water, or there are other aquifers that possibly have to go south. So part of that work is then to work with different to do new projects. One of those options is also a pipeline to move from the upland to the percent. That was not really practical when you use it as a drought water supply, but if you're going to use it as a regular water supply, we could draw regularly every day, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, about 7.5 million gallons of water. So we are looking, at the option of capture that portion of the options that we can use. Some of that water may not need to be cleaned because some of the industries that we're looking at need potable use the water. You might have to do some treatment, but iron out. A lot of industries.
Matt, can you talk a little louder?
The thing is, when you look at the screen, we're not reading your lips.
So I need to go backwards?
No.
Okay.
I
Here on.
Just talk about it.
Here on out.
Yeah.
So we have the future options are to, but also in Tara can look at are using non-potable water from North Water Plant to a more extensive level, and also increasing a lot of water reclamation options, which could be we look at working with industries to be more frugal with the water that they're already using, instead of just maybe one pass to a cooling system, and do multiple passes. They could do, we said, 10 passes through their system. The water gets more and more unusable as it goes. The they can use more of. Also, looking at options to retain water from South Water from the sanitary district plant. Opening wells in the south of, or downstream of the south of the water treatment, to use some of that effluent, reduced water supply. So there are other options that we can, as Robert pointed out earlier, to actually use some of the water, what do you call it, satellite recycling in the area northeast area. Clean some of the water and get it back into the industries.
I just want to emphasize, and I thank you for that presentation. I know you have a couple more comments on the next slide, but we are not asking for additional water in order to meet increased demand from ADM. ADM has not asked for additional. ADM has their own sources of water besides the North Water Treatment Plant. In the event that we were in some kind of a drought condition, we have the authority to downsize the amount that they can draw from the lake anyway. The request for the City Council to evaluate additional water supply, additional water reuse is for two things and two things only. Continued progress towards having drought resilience, and the second is, if the council wishes, to have that as a resource for economic development for non-EDM additional businesses that would choose to locate here, or that using this as an asset we would attract to it.
I don't know who the question would be to, but we need to get rid of diesel and all that, or more cost of it. But any of these surveys they're going to be doing, going to consider possibly using solar to run some of these pumps.
The short answer is yes. You want to go into more detail?
We are looking at that. That was an option brought up. We felt it was, right now we're kind of leaning toward being more practical and tying an electrical system over there. Those are options first to this point.
I assume that in the long run, solar save years out. Not immediately, but years out, they're a lot more savings than we have already. So basically, you're asking us to build it and then we'll come, is what you're basically asking?
Well, the reality is.
Or do we have to incrementally build it or
Probably
incrementally
yes
add
and
the water? It's just, it's a kind of a gamble what you're gonna do, is that?
I don't know if it's a gamble, Chuck, or not. It's, you get opportunities and you get eliminated in economic development. And if you don't have economic development is about elimination. And they look at who has the roads that they need, whether it's north, south, east, west, if you gotta have interstate, gotta have 4-lane highways, whatever else they need. The thing that we've really got that a lot of communities don't is water. And you can't say to a company, well, we'd love to have you, give us 5 years so we can get this together. We've gotta,
They want it now.
yeah, and if you don't have it, you're out. So, and so you have to, you don't wanna be irresponsible and, build a ball diamond in the cornfield that nobody's gonna come to. This is a real thing that real companies need. It's a resource, other places have other things. Water's what we have.
And John and I and Nicole over at the Economic Development Corporation are the ones oftentimes dealing with these. And we said to them, we can have the water you need, just give us 5 years. But next, yeah. Now, it's not wise or prudent to overbuild either. And so I think that a more fluid strategy that tries to stay ahead of it and also understands that I don't believe that it's also prudent, I believe it would be imprudent to expect that all the cost of this has to be paid for by the city. If an industry comes and has a large demand, way out of proportion to the normal water customer, it is not only appropriate, but it is compatible with what many other cities do to say, okay, we can accommodate that for fuel industries. There's going to be a capital charge, okay, to deliver to you because of the unique demand that you have for this huge volume of water. That puts a strain on our system that is unique to your system. Therefore, above and beyond your water rates, we have a capital charge.
investment.
and we can recoup our capital cost for that. So going forward, and well, first of all, I'll start a little bit in the past. That's why I think that it was a wise decision for you to put $15 million of ARP into water and sewer. Why it was a prudent decision to issue when the market was just right for it, to issue $25 million in water and sewer bonds we sold a couple of years ago. Going forward, there continue to be grants and low interest loans available to us, and there may be some adjustment to the rate base. But I also believe that a significant component can come from capital charges to industries. But I think the other way to make sure that it's efficient is to look at it holistically, which is not something, frankly, that cities normally do. But I think given the fact that the most likely businesses that are going to be attracted to Decatur are ones, because they're agribusiness or they're data center or power production, and they have a heavier water demand than some other businesses, but that's what's going to be the most likely to attract Decatur. We want to go down that road. And I don't have that much to add, even though my name is on this slide, because I've interjected a couple of times during the course of some of the other folks' presentation. And so what I really just want to come back to, and then throw it open to your discussion, is the two other decisions, which is, even though the details of these will continue to come back to you, agreement by agreement, contract by contract, as they're bid out by the Public Works Department and brought back to you, are you comfortable? I mean, we have to wait for the environmental issues that Keith mentioned to be resolved, but are we comfortable with proceeding to the next level with the former Vulcan pit, Lake Toco, and the DeWitt upgrades, so that we have the drought resiliency? And then, in addition to that road, and the answer to that question, does council want to go beyond drought resiliency and look at all of the different options that come from, that are illustrated by this slide and by the background provided here? Even though I freely admit I don't have all the details, especially the last one of those questions.
I think you answered one of my questions. From past experience, we might be able to get some grants to maybe help fund some of these.
Just have staff clarify some numbers for me. My understanding is right now, the South Water Treatment Plant can pump 3 MGD to the Northeast project. And ADM, while it may not have the capacity, can essentially pump up to 8 million MGD. So that, my math is correct, is 11 MGD. And we have said that there is a need for 7 MGD. So right now, we have pumping capacity to meet the Northeast quadrant's needs.
What Robert said was that the range of additional demand could be very roughly 7 to 12 MGD, additional beyond what we currently provide. And that could be provided by any combination of what's illustrated on this slide.
We already got 11 MGD capacity, if I get this right.
Again, we're doing an average. Those numbers are average numbers, so we have to figure in the peak. So we need numbers above that, the peak.
Okay. And then the other question, and this was back on the slide's point. If I'm looking at the gap is 2.3 million. Okay. So that's from the MTER report, ADM 24. And if I could just finish my thoughts, you've mentioned Lake Toco, you've mentioned the former Vulcan pit, and the DeWitt well field. And even if I were to say DeWitt well field with pipeline, there's still a deficit. Okay, when we went from what was proposed originally in Terra, the ADM 24 MGD, there's still a gap.
I have the same problem reading that report. They're expressing that number in millions of gallons. So a million MGD is a different thing. And what that report is trying to do is to basically fill the gap during the drought season. Like they had this is a model of the lake as the year goes on, and during this part of the season, there's not enough water to keep the lake up. So they're basically trying to fill that bathtub millions of gallons of water. And it's a different calculation than what we're talking about, and that's expressed in millions of gallons.
Okay, well, I hear what you're saying, but I'm looking at the Terra 2019 report, I'm looking at the Terra update, and both values are in millions of gallons. But the other issue is, this first thing we talked about, the lake keeps filling up with sediment.
I'll open it for discussion. I think it's obvious if we want the community to grow and get back to a higher population and all sorts of jobs and jobs for us. Water is one of our greatest incentives we have to offer.
Well, after listening to an expert on groundwater on KMOX presentation, and I've mentioned this before, the next wars will be fought over water, not oil. So I think we need to be proactive as much as possible in that, and move ahead as much as we can in a responsible manner.
I mean, 100 years ago, the city council sat here and came up with the idea of, Mr. Staley's request, we're gonna build this lake or not, and thank God they did. So that had to have been an incredible risk at that time. Other comments?
I would just say, I mean, I'd be all for this, and you said all along that we can pull the reins in if we have to. I mean, or is there a certain point of no return? Because there's several different projects here. You said we would incrementally approve these as we go along, or you see all of them be at once?
Sometimes it depends on the grant money you get. You know, if it fits a specific program, that's, I mean, government's pretty good at, and we've gotten really good with our consultants about finding what fits here. It's not just okay, it's a water project, here's a check. But there are places you can look, whether it's, they've got different criteria that you can make stuff fit.
There are a lot of variables, and we'll never, I think, be able to quantify all the variables definitively. Let me give you an example. It's not uncommon for the early stages of economic development discussion with the business, and they'll say, okay, how much water do you need? And Alf and Buell are always guessing high. Oh, well, okay, we need 5 MGD. Okay, well, let's take a look at that, and then they start to really put pencil to paper, and the number starts to go down, and then we say, if you're going to put that kind of demand on our system, we're going to need to charge you a capital charge. Oh, capital charge? Oh, well, let's see if we can recycle some more. So there's an ongoing discussion that takes those variables and makes them a little bit more predictable. And with some of these industries that we're having, I mean, we're very grateful to be having these discussions and to be having so much positive growth in the area. There's some which are synergistic with ADM, some which are not. And ADM's willingness to say, well, if there's a case to be made that we should share with another industry that makes sense, we're willing to do that. What I'm trying to say, maybe not doing a big job of it, is that this is going to be an ongoing analysis, especially when throwing all of it together here, which I think is the most efficient way to do it. So, can we scale back if we need to? Yes. Will you approve these contracts each as they come and each time we bring them? Would it be appropriate for you to say, ask, do we need this one based on new information since the 2023 study session? Absolutely it is. This is not, maybe it's not exactly the same thing, but at the last city council meeting, you set a plan in motion for Jasper Street, but there'll be components that come back to you, several of them, for you to vote on separately, and you can change that plan as you go along, just like you'll change this one to meet the actual realities of what the industries need, the actual realities of what we find out we can, how we can add more quantifiable answers to some of these options we have out there. The next step, if you say yes in general, start going down this road, will be to go back to Interra and ask them to do another report as quickly as possible for us on some of the options under phase 2. They've given us a lot of good feedback that we've proceeded on with phase 1, but phase 2 not so much because it wasn't in the scope of their report. So that'll be the next thing for us to do. Find out, does it really make sense to have a pipeline from the wood? Should we be looking at another well entirely in a different location that goes into the Muhammad Aquifer, or several other options that and evaluate each of them in this larger mix as well as in the normal cost benefit analysis and make those decisions as we go along. I freely admit, I can't quantify all the variables. But what I was hoping to get from council today is, in general, are you comfortable going down this road?
I think we're generally moving in the right direction from what I'm hearing and seeing. I do think we need to be cautious. And when we need to do the capital charges, we need to really seriously do that. And I think we also need to always, when new companies come in, have language in writing legally that, I know you're saying with ADM, they say they're willing to, it's saying willing to, and then in the language, we may never see it will. So I think we need to incorporate language whenever we get into a situation with big companies. Because they change ownership, they change management, and the person they say we're willing, the new person they say we ain't willing to do nothing. So I think we need to protect ourselves as a city, protect the decisions we're making by having the language we have that we will do this and the event we need to cut that.
Any comments, Mike?
How much sediment are we catching in our catch basin? I think there's 3 or is there 5?
These are the sediment traps that you're talking about, right? The sediment traps, I regret to inform you, have not been as efficient as they were pitched to be. I think they're catching about less than 10% of the sediment. So that's another reason why we need to be looking at alternative ways to both deal with the sediment that's entered the lake as well as Jennifer talked about, trying to keep it from entering the lake in the first place by stopping it upstream.
Lisa?
I just have some comments, and I would like my colleagues to indulge me, because I would take a long and different path to answer the questions you're asking us tonight. When the Farm Progress Show first came to Decatur, and it was based there, Richmond Community College did a 3.5-minute video, which really was a visioning or a dreaming of how we could take what happened on that 13-acre Farm Progress Show and what it could mean to the future of Decatur. I have asked everybody I know to get me that video because I think you would enjoy seeing it, because it was a vision in 2007, which we have almost accomplished in 2023. We're on the verge of accomplishing that in 2023 and moving into the future. It really took a look holistically of what agriculture and agribusiness meant to our community. And the idea was that we would leverage what we have and connect to other business and industry to attract them to our community. So it truly was this concept of the flywheel. You know, when that flywheel first starts, it's really slow, and maybe it doesn't make it quite over to the top, but then it falls. But as the flywheel continues to work and it picks up traction and leverage, it really gains momentum. We have gained that momentum here. This is truly working towards that future even further. We are fortunate to be able to sit in this room and have these very difficult and very expensive conversations. We're blessed, quite frankly, to be able to do that, because that northeast quadrant is beginning to look like what we dreamed in 2007. We have taken some very expensive steps to get us to where we are tonight. We've already done a lot of sewer projects up in that area, and there was a lot of pushback because, oh, it's too big, it's too expensive. But I'm grateful that we made those decisions because they are now paying the dividends today. Ask states and communities out west. Years ago, they wish their communities would have had these conversations around drought resilience. Because they're not paying the price, because they weren't looking to the future like we are doing here tonight. We are fortunate to have economic development where many communities would love to trade places with us. So I think if you're invested in this community, if you are invested in the future and the people and our businesses, this is a path that we really need to embark on. I've only been here 9 years, and in that 9 years, I've never had not one time, a project come, and it was like a Christmas package that you could just unwrap. And it was all there. I mean, it was beautiful, it was paid for, it was functional. We're never gonna have that, but that's what this process is. I really want to thank the staff that has taken the time to get us to this tonight. This was many years of work, and this is the culmination of it. And so I think it would be very unwise to say, well, it was a really nice presentation, but it's pretty expensive, can't do it. I think my answer is yes. We need to do what it takes to build the future of our community.
Dennis, you in? Okay. David?
So, in regards to water distribution, based on what the city staff says, it's not clear there's a need between what is already capable of going from the south water treatment plant and the potential for the north water treatment plant. At most, we've got about a 1 million gallon per day deficit. It will cost, based on the Interra memo, $20 million, and that was the initial estimate to improve our distribution, $20 million. On the water supply issue, it's clear to me we still have a gap, even just to reach the 24 MGD ADM level as per the Interra report. But when you think about the costs that are adding up here, I would encourage the city staff to look into the active Vulcan pit. The active Vulcan pit is estimated at $33 million. So you look at the cost for the proposals that you have made, and then if you add in a pipeline to that, you are starting already to get to the cost of the active Vulcan pit, but the active Vulcan pit will provide far more water than that. And so if we want to think holistically, we want to think big, then we should probably think about the Vulcan pit, which not only covers the gap, but gives us more to sell.
Jeff?
First, I want to thank the staff, everybody here that spoke tonight, because it's an expert on water, so everything that you said I learned. So I appreciate you taking the time to come after hours tonight to do all this out. Obviously, this was a lot of work, so I'm all in. I think you answered my question. If we get to a situation where we need to pause, we can pause. So I'm cautiously want to move forward.
Ed?
Drought resiliency is a priority for me as well. Once again, these people were by the pros, and I back them 100%. I like the direction they're going. I mean, the tour is helpful too. I mean, when you see the new ways of new line, the electrical panels from April of '87, there's issues within. So I appreciate everything that was brought to us. I think we're going in the right direction. And just when we have these discussions, I'm just a firm believer in the grace and the staff we have, so I appreciate it.
No, I'm in. I always remember back when I started coming here at a council meeting, Councilman Pat Legler kept saying, we're not covering the cost of making our water. Every year he would say that. Well, then finally the councils made the right decision and we moved ahead and we still have very cheap water compared to many, many other communities. So think of what could have been done if we had raised the water rates gradually over those years. So we're being responsible. As Chuck said, if we have to back off a little bit, fine, we'll do that. But yeah, let's move ahead.
Scott, do you have what you need to move ahead?
Yes, I hear the council saying that proceed with phase one and come back with more specifics on how we advance phase two.